Today, I'm talking about why we should not rush our trauma healing and what we should do instead. I know in my case, I kind of felt like my trauma was this thing inside of me that I wanted to reach in, yank out, and throw away from me. And I wanted to know how to do it as soon and as fast as I could. Not sure if that resonates with you, but I know a lot of my clients have felt the same way where we just want to heal. And you know what? It is understandable because if you've been through trauma and you've been suffering as a result of the trauma for a long time, of course, we're going to want to do it quickly. Of course, we're going to want to finally get to who we really are. But one thing I learned on my trauma recovery journey is that rushing doesn't help. In fact, it hinders your journey. That being said, let's dive in. For those that don't know me, my name is Michelle. I'm a certified trauma-informed recovery coach. I'm also a somatic experiencing practitioner and the founder of the Thrivers School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where we meet live on Zoom every week. And all the tips I give on YouTube, on Instagram, we go through them together on Zoom. So if that's something that resonates with you, I'll leave the link there for you to check it out. So let's talk about why it would be the worst thing to do. When it comes to trauma, I know with myself, the things that we underwent, especially if we underwent them in childhood, but even if we were adults when we were undergoing this trauma, the things that we were going through were so overwhelming. They were too much for our system, our nervous system to handle, that we kind of leave our body. We leave our body and we're living up in our heads. It's almost like the body wasn't safe. It wasn't safe to feel. It wasn't safe to express itself. It wasn't safe to be autonomous. So many different ways that whatever your circumstances were, that they caused your nervous system to feel so much danger that we kind of disconnect and we're living, like I said, up in our head. Well, trauma is stored in our body. So we're kind of disconnected from that. And when I say trauma, what I'm meaning is that stuck fight, flight, freeze, or fawn energy that gets turned on because of whatever we're facing. So we're facing this dangerous circumstance, whether it's a car accident, whether it's an attack or an abusive, physically or emotionally parent or significant other. It turns on our body's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses. However, we don't fight, especially in childhood. We don't fight. We can't fight. We're children. We can't flee because we can't take care of ourselves. So we wind up staying in environments that are constantly provoking our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And so even if we leave toxic relationships, even if we leave bad situations, toxic parenting, or traumatic situations, and it's no longer happening, we still have the fear, the felt sense of fear that our body got stuck in. We still have the memories. We still have the triggers that are all alive in the body. And I know with myself, all of that in my body prevented me from being my best self, from being who I really was. It caused me to act in ways that was not me. When I was triggered and when I was in a trauma response, I was not myself. I was not my best self. It was horrible, which would then send me down a shame spiral, which is awful. And obviously, I know with myself, I just wanted that to stop. However, trying to rush working through that is equivalent to, let's say I want to get in shape and I haven't worked out in years. And so I go to the gym and I want to lift 100 pounds and I want to squat 100 pounds. I want to bench press 100 pounds and I haven't lifted weights in years. It might be an awesome goal to have. It may be something absolutely manageable that I can do. However, I have to build capacity to be able to do that. I have to start with smaller weights. I have to let my body learn how to be with that resistance, work through that, and then continue to add until I can get to that goal of whatever exercise goal I wanted to accomplish. We know that anyone that just goes into the gym and starts lifting beyond their capacity is going to hurt themselves and is not acting wisely. When it comes to trauma, we have to have that same outlook. In order to be with that energy that kicks on, that fight or flight or freeze energy that causes that reaction. And you guys know what I'm talking about. If you've ever been in a fight response where you're like off the handle, right? There's so much anger and there's so much aggression that afterward you're like, what happened? That wasn't me. Or if you've been in a freeze response where something in you is like, what's going on? Why can't I move forward? Why can't I do this? I know I can. Why is my body feeling like it's made of concrete? Or that flight response where you just can't stop doing, or thinking, right? All of a sudden, you just can't be out of your head. You can't slow your thoughts down. You know how much that impacts you. You know how hard that is. You know that you're not choosing those behaviors. They're happening as a result of this trauma energy that's stored in your body. You're not choosing that. So when we want to work through trauma, before we can even work through the past, we have to build our capacity in the present. We have to build our capacity to be with our emotions. We have to build our capacity to be with the sensations that our emotions create. We have to build our capacity to be with ourselves, be in our felt sense when we're just going through day-to-day things. The tendency is to want to go into the trauma. But all of that energy, I know with myself, it was like a tornado that I didn't even know was inside of me. So what recovery looked like for me was I started to notice, I didn't even know that all of that was happening inside of me, but I was able to see the reactions. I was able to see myself when I was being flung into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn in day-to-day things. And so starting with understanding my triggers, what was underneath them, being with the sensation that happens right before being flung into the trauma response, and then starting to work with that energy that was there. So it was like working in reverse. You start with what happens after. If we try to just be with that trauma energy from the past when we can't even be with it in our day-to-day life, we can wind up flooding our system. We can wind up being flung into complete emotional dysregulation because there's no time in the areas of our brain that store trauma memories. There's no time. So when we feel those sensations that are similar to the sensations we felt in the past, it's almost like we somatically time warp back to when we were originally experiencing those sensations. And that can be really overwhelming. That can bring up too much emotion. That's why going too fast doesn't help. It's like going into the gym and picking the heaviest weights and expecting yourself to be able to lift them. We have to build our body's ability to be with those sensations, with strong emotions. And the best place to build capacity, or the lighter weights, I should say, are in the present moment with our day-to-day things. So if you feel like you've been rushing and trying to get healed faster and it's not working, start being aware of how you are on a day-to-day basis with what goes on in your life, with the challenges you face on a day-to-day basis, learning to be with the sensations, learning to be with the feelings that come up, working with what comes up, and you might need help. This is not easy work. So a somatic experiencing practitioner can help, as well as learning some somatic exercises or practices that can help you to have a resource as you're working on this. So I just really want to stress the importance of having support when you do this. Be very careful with working with this stuck fight flight energy on your own. It can be extremely overwhelming. So I just want to throw that out there. I'll share a little bit about my experience just to help you to know how I did this and what it looks like as you're healing, just to give you an idea. So with myself, any of this information that I just said, I had no idea about any of this. All I knew was what had happened to me. I knew what I lived and that it had changed me, and that it had caused my body to no longer feel like it could function the way that I knew that it could. And so as I was learning, the way that I began to build my capacity was after the fact. I couldn't be with feelings in my body. I couldn't be with sensations in my body. I remember standing in the kitchen and thinking I have to clean and do the dishes, and feeling as if my body was like on such an overwhelm that something seriously bad was going to happen. Now, again, that's where the nervous system is stuck because of trauma from the past. And then it's just being played out even in our day-to-day life. And so what I learned to do was to start noticing after. At that moment, when I was in the kitchen overwhelmed, I couldn't work with that energy. It had to be like the next day, or when it finally calmed down, I could think again and be like, what happened? Oh, that was a lot of anxiety. And I started to notice my emotions because yes, I was totally disconnected from them. And then what would happen is I would start to be able to notice them more and more in real time. So there I would be at a situation that maybe created a lot of anxiety, such high anxiety that I would go into like disconnect, dissociation. And I could be with it for a little bit and I could notice it. And then I could tell I was gone. Little by little, I was able to be with it more and more. Once I was able to be with the sensation, in other words, my capacity was building so that I became bigger than the sensation instead of the sensation being so big that I had to go into a trauma response. So when that happened, that's when I could do some work with the past trauma. Until that moment, you should not be even thinking about trying to heal your trauma until you can be with the everyday overwhelming sensations that can come up in your body. I hope this makes sense. Once you can do that, then there are ways to deactivate that stuck energy. And I'll talk about that in other videos. But I just really wanted to stress that that is one of the reasons why we don't want to rush, because we'll wind up extremely emotionally dysregulated. That will feed the belief, I can't heal. Then we'll stop. We'll find ourselves in trauma loops, and the suffering of the trauma continues longer and longer. On top of that, when we rush, we actually activate our nervous system. We're impatient. We're hard on ourselves. And the pieces of us that need healing, it's like there's a wall. There's a wall between our mind and our body, what we want and how we're trying to shove our body. And our body's like, nope, I'm not letting you in, because of how we're treating ourselves. So rushing winds up causing a harsh inner critic. It winds up causing impatience, frustration, anger. And when the nervous system detects these things, we constrict, we tense up, and then we can't work with anything because our body won't let us in. So healing it's not about what I thought it was when I was first on this journey. It's not about reaching inside of myself and flinging something out of me. It's really about learning to be with the pieces of me that were hurt in the past and didn't get what they needed. And now it's my responsibility as the adult I am now, the educated person I am now, to be with those pieces in a way that nurtures them and that creates an environment where healing can take place, where deactivation can take place. And that's what helps us to work through that trauma. So I hope this was helpful for anyone that resonates with this and yet feels like they need assistance. Make sure you check out Thriver School of Transformation, because that's what we do. We work on the healing journey together, and we work in ways that helps us to build the capacity for change, to build the capacity for healing, to build the capacity to work through this stuck energy that is there in the body. As much as we want to learn our way through it, I was guilty. I just want to learn, find out what I had to do. And now that I knew, I expected change to happen. Didn't work. As much as we want to learn through it, we have to get the body on board as well. And that is an awesome resource, because you don't have to do it alone. You get weekly support. There are 2 to 3 live meetings every week for you to attend. So make sure you check it out if this is resonating with you.